We know that our Holy Father, St. Francis, had a great love of the cross. From the habit that we wear being made in the form of the cross, to the stations of the cross, to a life which, himself certainly embraced a life of penance and suffering. We know that aside from the stigmata itself, he lived with many different illnesses and sicknesses and hardships. And partly this is one of the signs of his great love of the cross. It wasn't something that he fled from. In fact, he even loved to bless in the sign of the cross. We're reminded in many different ways in our faith of the cross that Christ asks us to bear. We're reminded in today's gospel how if we are to be our Lord's followers, his disciples, we need to be willing to carry our cross and not be surprised by the sufferings that we're to endure and suffer in loving our Lord and following in his ways. This is something that he stresses again and again in many different places, and the apostles continue to exhort us. St. Paul is, not the least among them. We even hear himself in his own sufferings, which they used, in a certain way to apply to St. Francis. Henceforth, let no man trouble me, for I bear the brand marks of Jesus in my body. This is something that we hear from St. Paul. And this is one of the things that, I guess in the sufferings, one of the things that's important, as we strive to be conformed to Christ crucified in our lives, is we have to realize the difference between, say, the cross itself and our want to embrace it, want to be joyful in carrying our cross, and yet we have to bear in mind our own Lord's carrying his cross. One of the reflections I was just reading, I think the last couple of days, as our Lord's carrying the cross, we don't exactly see him laughing as he's carrying the cross. We reflect on the stations, and none of them do we see him. It's not like he's at some kind of a party enjoying himself. He's suffering. And sometimes we forget, there is a difference, to say, between having a cross which I reject and I don't want, and my attitude towards that and my behavior in carrying that cross, versus I have a cross, I accept it. I also recognize, it isn't something pleasant. I'm not rejoicing in having a big party and having my cross. This is the nature of a cross. It's something that vexes us. It's something we're opposed to. The affections, the emotions, they don't like the cross. And yet to accept it and offer that cross continually, especially every time that, say, it bothers us, it's an opportunity to renew this offering to our Lord, to unite ourselves with his cross and the cross of our Blessed Mother, the sufferings of our Blessed Mother. These are things, it's beautiful the way we Franciscans, as we know from the story of our Lord, St. Francis receiving stigmata, that he received it close to the exaltation of the cross. And it's beautiful how, we celebrate this miracle, this gift that our Holy Father received, very near the exaltation of the cross. It seems very appropriate. May we ourselves, from this great gift that our Holy Father has received, the sacred stigmata of our Lord. He's apparently seemingly to almost be the first, although some people do wonder if maybe St. Paul actually also had the stigmata. There's speculation that some think that maybe he did. Whatever that may be, we weren't there. It's hard to. We'll find out when we get to heaven. Hopefully, we get there. But let us rejoice, in this gift that we have been given. Even down to our own day, that we have, in other individuals who have had the stigmata. It seems that our Holy Father was very unique in the fact that he had the nails. You could actually move them around, and they would, they did very much protrude. And they actually were movable. I'm sure it was very painful for people to experiment on our Holy Father, as we know from the one person who thought that they ought to touch one of his wounds to verify it. And he simply cried out in great pain and said, "May God forgive you," to the brother who did it. But at any rate, let us
Miserere